I say, and everything that I do. You're the love of all loves, the light of all lights, nearer than the nearest, dearer than the dearest. We are all your children, whether near or far. Help us always to remember just who we are, just who we are. We are your sons and daughters, sisters and brothers all. This gift of life you have given to us, one and all, both great and small. You're the love of all loves, the light of all lights, nearer than the nearest, dearer than the dearest, the fountain of bliss, the abode of grace. Fill us all up with joy by the sight of your face. Through my every thought and all the words that I say, and everything that I do, please guide me in every way, each night and day, through every place I may go. Please give me wisdom to know your love is in every heart. You fill each part, you're the light of the soul, the light of the soul. You're the light of all lights, the love of all loves, nearer than the nearest, dearer than the dearest.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityarma Amritam Gamaya Avir Avir Ma Edhi Rudrayate Dakshina Mukham Te Namam Pahinityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through, O Lord, and protect us evermore with your loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. Hi. I'm happy to see so many of you brave the elements today. How about that? Or maybe you just can't sit outside. And that could be it, right? Anyway, my name is Swami Arupeshananda, and the title of today's talk is On Greatness, a sufficiently vague title, and so perhaps it won't be too much of a surprise to learn that it took me a long time to figure out where this talk was going. But I know where it started. It started with a conversation I had years ago. A friend of mine had read a book. It was called Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell. Does that sound familiar? A few people have read it. Yeah, okay. So it's a book essentially about greatness. What's required for greatness? There's more to it than that, but that's a lot of it. And one of the big takeaways of the book for a lot of people is that to achieve greatness in anything, regardless of what it is, requires 10,000 hours of work. This can be summarized by a quotation that the author provides near the beginning of the book. He says, "In study after study of composers, basketball players, fiction writers, ice skaters, concert pianists, chess players, master criminals, and what have you, this number, 10,000 hours, comes up again and again. It seems that it takes the brain this long to assimilate all that it needs to obtain true mastery." And so we learn that Bill Gates, through a very fortunate series of unlikely events, just so happened to have 10,000 hours of computer programming under his belts when the PC became widely available. We learned that the Beatles, again, through a series of rather unlikely and very fortunate events, happened to have 10,000 hours of time playing together. They were touring in Germany, and they had to play 8-hour shifts, 5 days a week after week. And so they had a tremendous amount of time to practice, and people started to notice these guys. Hey, they're getting pretty good. Amazingly, Tiger Woods had 10,000 hours of golf on the course by the time he was 12. So my friend reads this book, and he wants to raise some championship children. And so he inflicts this book on his son. This is maybe one of the reasons we have kids, is to vicariously live through them. He's a guitar player, his son's a guitar player, and he says, "Hey, Junior, if you reach 10,000 hours," I think the book came out, his son was about 7 or 8 years old when the book came out. So it's a perfect time. If you reach 10,000 hours with your guitar, you're going to be like world champion guitar player. The kid actually does it. By the time he's 19 or 20, he has actually reached 10. He's logged carefully his hours, just like Dad suggested, and he actually reaches 10,000 hours by the time he's out of puberty. And so he does what we all do in these situations. He uploads his accomplishment to YouTube. That's what you do now. And so he learns, to his chagrin, that there's a kid in South Korea about his age who's just way better than he is. Now, that brings a kind of painful truth about the modern age that makes me feel somewhat sympathetic to today's youth. And that is that whatever you're doing that you think is cool or noteworthy, there is someone on YouTube doing it way better than you are ever going to be able to do it. In the pre-YouTube world, my friend's son would have unquestionably been the best guitar player around for many years. He might never have met the other kid from South Korea. But now these people come right into your face from all over space, and they're amazing, the things they can do. And naturally, what happens in our social media crazed world is we gravitate towards these exceptional cases, and they get all the views and the upvotes and the likes and whatever other measures of our worth we have on the internet. And the rest of us get more or less ignored. And this is actually not something new to social media. This was pointed out by Jesus thousands of years ago. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away, even that which he hath. It's a tough teaching. And it seems to be the rule of so many facets of our life here in this world that naturally we're going to gravitate to the exceptional cases and they're going to get all the attention. Well, that's okay. I mean, that's fine, really, if we're fine with it. But the problem is that a lot of us aren't. And this also was pointed out long before YouTube by one of the Swamis of our order. This is Swami Arupeshananda speaking. He says, "This craze for talents that you have in the West is a source of great misery to you. You judge yourself as well as one another by all these peculiar standards. You feel you have to have something to show off. If you do not have it in you, you suffer from an inferiority complex. And if you do have it in you, you suffer from a superiority complex. And out of that comes hatred and anger and all kinds of things. There's no end to it." And so the attention that people get on these social media platforms is driven by what the Swami calls a craze for talents. He says that it is a particular problem in the West. Well, maybe, I don't know. But I think it's safe to say that this desire to see exceptional people do amazing things, whether that's music or acrobatics or anything else, we've been looking at that for thousands of years all over the world. And there's nothing wrong with that until we get to this problem that the Swami points out. We start judging ourselves and others by these God-given talents. We start even going further than that and measuring our self-worth by these God-given talents. And this has actually proven deadly. I looked this up for this talk on the CDC websites. And I'm such an incorrigible nerd. I downloaded the data and I graphed the results, and I was going to actually, use the screen and show you the graph, but that's really more of a TED Talk thing to do. And so I refrained, I controlled my inner nerd and decided not to do that. But I'll just tell you what the story is. If you look at the year the iPhone was invented, 2007, then social media essentially started. Amazingly, they've tracked suicide rates in preteen girls, so a tween, like 10 to 14 was the age group. From 2007 to 2021, goes up almost by a factor of 5 over that time. Before 2007, no statistically significant change in suicide rate. You plot this, you give it this nice linear increase, almost like 460% is what it is. And you look at the iPhone sales over that same period, and they just overlap beautifully. I mean, there's strong correlation between these two trends. Of course, Apple would say this is just a coincidence. But I think that anyone who has known or even seen a teenager with their phone, we understand just how deathly important they can take their social media status to be. And of course, maybe if we get a little older, we don't take this so seriously, but nevertheless, our pursuit of greatness, whether we measure it in likes on Facebook or views on YouTube or anything else, or it has nothing to do with social media, long before that, however we view greatness and however we pursue greatness, what I'd like to talk about today is how to do that without making ourselves miserable. That is really the purpose of my talk today that I kind of landed on after some debates. And of course, as the Swami pointed out, not all of us are making ourselves miserable with this. There are a few of us who are getting the likes and the attention that we want. And this is kind of an ego rush, and that feels pretty good. And from the spiritual standpoint, this isn't really helping us any better than being depressed about our lack of talents. The Swami goes on and he says, however desirable such talents and abilities may seem in terms of worldly achievements, spiritually speaking, they are as much of a bondage as anything else. Now, why is that? Because the more we identify with our abilities in this world, our lack of them or our abundance of them, the more we are identified with the difference between myself and others. I can do this and you can't. You can do that and I can't. Or you have this and I don't, and I have this and you don't. These differences between us will always be there. And the more we identify, the more we emphasize those things in our consciousness, in the long run, the more unhappy we're going to be. And the more we can try and see the similarities behind these differences. That's what Vedanta says is the real truth behind the appearance in this world. The truth behind the appearance of difference in this world is unity. The truth is unity in variety. So the more we identify with these differences in our abilities and gifts, the further we get away from that underlying unity that is behind us all. And the Swami ends with a rhetorical question. He says, why do you have to run after these things which are not essentially yours? That's an interesting question. Because you think, if I spent 10,000 hours learning to play the guitar, I'm a guitar player. The skills I have on the guitar, they're mine, aren't they? Or anything. I spend 10,000 hours earning money or doing whatever I do. Isn't the money mine? Or I get an education. Don't I know that stuff? Isn't the education mine? Well, it is, but it's not essentially mine. That word is key. Because if I break my arm, I may never play the guitar again. Or if I get bonked on the head, I may forget everything I learned. That actually happened, believe it or not. I mean, people say that, but it actually happened. Brilliant scientist that you probably never heard of named Lev Landau, Russian physicist. The only physicist anybody knows is Einstein. But this guy was also remarkable. I mean, if you study the subject, there's nowhere that you just can't avoid his name. It's everywhere. Anyway, he was driving a car and he got in an accident, hit his head, couldn't remember any he knew who he was still the guy, but he couldn't do physics anymore. It was all gone. So it does happen, whatever it is. These things are not essentially ours. If you can lose it, it is not essentially yours. And so the Swami says, why do you run after these things which are not essentially yours? It is a rhetorical question. What he's really telling us, it's scolding us. Don't do this. And it's a loving scolding. Why is it a loving scolding? Because this doesn't work. That's why. Trying to pursue greatness, trying to achieve greatness through the manifestation of these external talents never satisfies anyone. It doesn't work. This was actually known at least 100 years ago by the psychologists. William James, 1902. Take the man most envied by the world, and in 9 cases out of 10, his inmost consciousness is one of failure. Either his ideals in the line of his achievements are pitched far higher than the achievements themselves, or else he has secret ideals of which the world knows nothing, and in regard to which he inwardly finds himself to be wanting. This is actually an experience that probably some of us have had. We do something well, and somebody says, hey, you're pretty good at that. Or, they say, you can do a lot of things. You're a pretty capable guy or girl or whatever. And we think, yeah, okay, maybe we like that. And, we enjoy the compliment or we don't or whatever. But then in our saner moments, in our more sober moments, when we're actually reflecting on our lives, we are aware that our lives are essentially a series
of blunders, misdeeds, and lost opportunities. That's what we know about ourselves. This is the truth that we all share. And you say, no, that's just you. Or actually, you don't say that. They say, that's you and that's me and maybe a few other people in here, but it's not the really good ones. It's not the people that really nail it, the guys with the billions of likes on whatever, Facebook. I actually don't have a Facebook account, but I've heard about this. Anyway, it's not true. Even the great ones have the same problem. I actually didn't look this one up. I already knew it. What's his name? The famous pianist, Vladimir Horowitz. Probably one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century, famously refused to perform Chopin's Etude in C. Why? It just wasn't good enough. He just hadn't done it quite well enough. We're talking about one of the best musicians in the world. And one that I didn't know that I was pretty surprised at, Emily Dickinson. Apparently she wrote like 1,800 poems, something like that. And less than 10 were published during her life because she thought they were such trash. And those few that got published during her life, many of them were done without her knowledge. She would not have permitted it had she known that they were going to publish this stuff. The other one that I also happen to know about was Kafka, the artist. He burned 90% of his work. Burned it. He hated it so much. And he told his friends to burn the rest when he died. Thankfully, they didn't. And then what does James say? He says, or else he has secret ideals of which the world knows nothing, and inwardly he feels himself to be wanting. In those rare cases where you actually nail it, and you know it, and everybody else knows it, then there's something else out there. Michael Jordan, remember him? Pretty much everybody thought he was the best basketball player ever. What happened? I mean, he didn't seem to debate the point. He was content with that title, as far as you could tell. What happened? He quits and goes to play baseball, and he stinks at it. Remember? And then he has to come back and play basketball again. He has a secret baseball urge that we don't even know about. So this doesn't work. This pursuit of greatness in the world that we keep doing, it doesn't bring us satisfaction. The psychologists have known this, but they don't know why. Why is it that we can never really make this work? Swami Vivekananda tells us, he says, you, the almighty cause of this universe, trying to reflect yourself in little mud puddles. But after making the attempt for a time, you find out it was all in vain, and you beat a retreat to the place from whence you came. See, there's the answer. This is why it will never work. He says, you, the almighty cause of this universe, this greatness that we feel called to, we all have this problem, and now some of us ignore it. That's a different problem. Those of us who don't ignore it and are trying to answer the call to greatness, we all have this problem in trying to manifest it, trying to see it outside of ourselves. It is within us. That's what Swami Vivekananda says. The greatness is within us. And we are trying through learning the banjo or to paint or to become a mega millionaire, whatever it is, we are trying to reflect that greatness and look at it. Here, look how great I am. And this is never going to work. But it also explains why we are compelled to do it. Because we feel it within ourselves. We feel this greatness, and it must be somewhere in my life. I must see it. And so the real reason that we're trying to get so many likes and friends on Facebook and views on YouTube and all these things is not because we want friends on Facebook and views on YouTube. It's because we're trying to manifest this greatness within ourselves, and it will never work because ultimately, at the end of the day, this divinity within us has no limits. Even if we spend 10,000 hours doing whatever it is we're going to do, we will not reach unlimited perfection with it. So at this point, we may be legitimately flummoxed. If we have this call to greatness, and there's no way to find satisfaction in these external pursuits that we find on YouTube, then how can we do it? I mean, what skill set, you put it another way, the skill set we see in this world, on YouTube or wherever else, if that's not the skill set through which divinity manifests itself, then what is the skill set of divinity? Is there a skill set that I can develop that actually will get me closer in touch with this divinity and will lead to some sense of satisfaction and fulfillment at the end of it? Yes. Vedanta says that we all have the ability to become infinitely moral. And there lies the real equality of man. One of the things that's so frustrating about these external pursuits is how unfairly distributed they are, how unequal they are. You know, the founding fathers said that all men are created equal. How? I mean, there are men born with just huge advantages over others. Jesus was right. The founding fathers are wrong. Jesus says, to him that hath shall be given, and him that hath not shall be taken away. That seems to be true. But this equality, I mean, there's certain things that you're just never going to be able to do, no matter how hard you try. If you're born blind, you're never going to play in the NBA. Actually, and along these lines, some of the things we do to overcome our limitations are absolutely heroic and wonderful. I had a friend in college whose brother was born with no arms. And he actually taught himself to play the guitar. You can believe that. So that's amazing, and it's admirable. On the other hand, he's never going to be Jimi Hendrix. He's never going to be Eddie Van Halen. He's never going to be a superstar guitar player. It's wonderful that he's overcome this thing, but he still has limitations. So instead of this, Vedanta says, unlike this unfair distribution of worldly gifts, we all have the ability to be perfectly moral. We can be infinitely truthful. We can be infinitely forgiving. We can be perfectly content. That is our birthright. These virtues that we sometimes see manifested in the lives of the great saints are the birthright of all of us. Whatever color, gender, all the rest of it, creed, orientation, all this stuff, makes no difference. We all have this ability. This is our divine skill set, you could say. And you may say, well, how does that work? Why does that connect me with my divinity? I'll just take one example. Let's say truthfulness. Maybe I'll do two examples. Anyway, truthfulness. What is truthfulness? It is a continual effort to assert what is and reject what is not. And this practice leads us to the ultimate truth. The other one I picked was contentment. What is contentment? To practice being satisfied with what you have, what your station of life is. What is the ultimate goal of contentment? It is to feel no desire. To be perfectly content is to have no desire. To have no desire is to have all desires fulfilled. So perfect contentment is absolute bliss. And so it goes with all these virtues. You can pursue a virtue to its perfect state of perfection, and you will find a divine quality. Truth, bliss, knowledge, all these things you find if we become perfect in these virtues. And so the real way to manifest our divinity and to find satisfaction is to pursue these moral qualities. And probably you're thinking, yeah, well, that sounds boring and difficult, and at least as far as the truthfulness thing goes, it's probably going to get me into trouble if I start getting a little too zealous about the truth. Maybe out there, I live in the Mojave Desert alone with my mom in an ashram. Practicing the truth isn't so hard, maybe. But if you're out here and you're trying to, rub elbows with people in the world and earn a living, being truthful all the time just doesn't seem that practical. And besides, I'd rather go learn the guitar. It just sounds more interesting to me. Being truthful all the time sounds boring. Learning how to sculpt or teaching myself German sounds interesting. Yeah, see, that's a thing. You know, we have these ideas of greatness. However off the wall they may be, they're not that easy to change. The idea is that through all our soul's transmigration, all the actions that we have undertaken in this life and in the lives before it, we have developed this mind with these peculiar tendencies. And this greatness that we all have within us shines through our being, through all the layers of this mind. And that divinity gets filtered, distorted, garbled, refracted, everything else, until we get this signal that says, hey, maybe you should play the guitar. And that signal turns out differently in every single one of us. Somebody else says, what I really need to do is I need to be a land baron. I need to be a business expert. Whatever it is we think, we get these ideas in our heads. They're not that easy to change. And so some monk says, hey, instead of pursuing those things, what you should do is you should pursue virtue. And we can't hear it. Someone says, well, no, I need to be beautiful and I need to get a lot of plastic surgeries to do that. And the monk says, no, what you really need to do is practice contentment. And you need to actually look at try and find your inner beauty, because the outer beauty is always going to fade, and somebody else is always going to be more beautiful than you are, and so that's never going to give you satisfaction. And if you can hear that, then you think, yeah, okay, maybe he's right, but I still want the tummy tuck. I still want it. I can't make that want go away. And so, yeah, monk boy, that's nice, but I'm stuck with this desire. So, can't I make it work my way? Can't I do what I want to do and make that be spiritual? Can't I do what I want to do and grow spiritually, become more virtuous that way? Can't I practice virtue through my chosen field of greatness? Because it's not really as negotiable as you're suggesting. Well, the good news is, yes, you can. But you have to be careful about it. You have to do it right. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. The Bhagavad Gita says that anything that you do can be done in such a way that it will lead you to divinity, to perfection. Even the example given in the book is murder on a battlefield. Arjuna's job in the book is to kill as many people as he can in as short a time as he possibly can. He's in war. Even with that objective, you can still, given that's your method of greatness, you can still reach the highest truth according to the Bhagavad Gita if you do it right. So this doing it right business, well, those are the details. I remember when I was in the monastery in Trabuco, we had a basketball hoop, and we used to blow off a little steam playing basketball. Having a bunch of young, healthy, celibate men together in a living situation, trying to be saints. There's quite a bit of friction, and a little basketball every now and then was a good way to sort of vent in a harmless way. And so one of the guys was taller than the rest of us, and he was a pretty good basketball player. He'd played, I don't know where. But he basically mopped the floor with the rest of us routinely. And he loved the game. So that went on for a while until a very gracious devotee decided to donate a ping pong table to the monastery. And then the group activities just sort of, migrated to ping pong. Well, it turns out the basketball star was a terrible ping pong player. And after a while, we noticed that he wasn't playing ping pong with the rest of us. He was boycotting the ping pong table. And finally, somebody said, hey, Mortimer, his name wasn't Mortimer, I'm just making that up. Hey, Mortimer, how come you don't play ping pong with us? And his answer, it was honest. He said, if Mortimer isn't good at it, Mortimer doesn't do it. That was his answer. See, now, this is not the way to make our greatness spiritual. This, what I'm saying is, if I'm not going to be the star, I'm not going to do it. I have to give him credit. because it could have been worse. What I've heard, not in this connection, but in others, similar connections, the answer is, I'm not playing ping pong because ping pong is impure and unholy, and basketball is pure and holy. That's why I love it so much. See, now what we've done, when we take that route, which does happen, what we're doing is we're confusing glorification of the ego with the manifestation of virtue. In other words, I love this not because I'm trying to look good. I love this because it's making me grow spiritually. This is delusion compounded with ego glorification. And so this is not doing it right. And you may think, well, duh, obviously it's not doing it right. I mean, if I'm doing this to be the star, maybe it seems obvious. If I'm doing this to be the star, then yes, of course, I'm not trying to be a better person. I'm trying to be the star. And yes, of course, basketball isn't any more or less holy than ping pong. These things maybe seem obvious. It's not always so obvious. The classic example that Sri Ramakrishna gives is charity work. You start off some charitable activity with just the noblest of intentions. You are going to be of service to your fellow man. You are going to feed the poor, clothe the homeless, whatever it is you're going to do, because you want to grow with love in your heart. You want to be a saint, whatever it is you want to realize God, all these noble intentions. What happens? You do it for a while, and people start to notice you. Yeah, hey, this guy's this is a good guy. He's doing some good things over there. Let's put him on YouTube. And there, and now you've got views and attention and maybe some money. People are interested in what you're doing. They want to contribute, and this sounds good. More help for more people, good. On the other hand, I'm kind of enjoying the attention here. And, I kind of wanted a new dishwasher, and we got some money, and, it gets complicated. We were so pure in the beginning. We were going to help people and love people and be unselfish. And then attention and finances start coming in, and they make our motivations murky. Now we can't quite tell, where am I coming from? Yeah, I want to help these people, but I also need that money, and I'm also enjoying these other things. And suddenly it's not so easy to figure out what our real agenda is. I don't know if we need another example. I'll give one more. Music. We're going to sing for the Lord. We're going to grow in devotion and have some bhakti. And we start singing, and somebody notices. And that's good. And so then we start singing maybe in a temple, not to point any fingers. We sing in public somewhere, maybe a temple. And then we notice there's somebody else that also comes and they sing better, and they're getting more attention than we are. And then we start to feel resentful, and we say, wait a minute, why am I feeling resentful? I came here to sing to grow in devotion, and now I have this resentment against this other person. What is the guiding principle here in all these cases? It was pointed out by a Catholic theologian named Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton, who actually, the stuff I've read of his, I agree with almost nothing that he says. But this one thing I thought he got right, and that was, he said anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. You see the logic of it, right? This points us to how to do it right. How is that? What we want to do, we want to find the activity's intrinsic merit. If this activity, my chosen field of greatness, is really capable of making me a better person, there must be some intrinsic merit to the activity that allows me to grow in virtue. If so, then it doesn't matter if I do it well or not by the standards of others. Of course, if you're a terrible singer and you're tone deaf, this doesn't mean you go out in public and start screeching, right? It doesn't mean that. It means that, you're good, maybe you're not good enough, like my friend's son, right? He's not the best guitar player in the world. According to this, that doesn't matter if we're really trying to grow in virtue. You don't have to be the best. You don't even have to be good. You can be completely forgotten. And you can still practice the guitar and benefit from it. We have to be somewhat open-minded to be able to see what the merit of our chosen path to greatness is. And I myself struggled with this quite a bit, and so I'll make this personal. I fought against this Sunday speaking thing. I fought this for years. I was never going to do this. That was 2008, I think, maybe, when Swami Swahananda started leaning on me to speak in public, and I was just adamantly opposed to it. Why? Because this order of monks, we are all centered around Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings. One of the central teachings you find in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he says it again and again. It's not just a one-off. He says it over and over again. Unless you have realized God, you should not give religious teachings. He says this over and over again. If God appears before you and gives you the command to speak, that's when you speak. Well, I read this book many times, and it was gospel truth for me. And so I was really closed to any, barring some miracle, the clouds part and God appears and says, go talk. Then I thought in my simple-minded way, yes, okay, then I'll go do it. Otherwise, I'll just stay in this monastery and play basketball and ping pong, and that'll be it, And so that was my position, and it was carved in stone as far as I was concerned. The Sri Ramakrishna said it. I believe that settles it, right? Total fundamentalist attitude I had. Closed to any other interpretation of Sunday preaching. Swami Swahananda pounded on me for years, trying to get me to change my mind on this, and it never worked until finally one day he pinned me. And I'm so grateful he did, because he was so right, and I knew he was right. The minute he said it, I thought, oh, he's right, I'm beaten. What did he say? He said, if you get up in front of a group of people and you speak about these spiritual truths, then unless you are a complete scoundrel, you will make more of an effort to incorporate these truths in your own life. You see that? So you get up here and you talk about these things, you will try to do them harder. You will try harder to do these. You will try harder to assimilate the spiritual instruction that you are parroting. And he said that, and I thought, oh, I know that's true, and I love that book so much, but the truth of it just got through. Finally, it beat me. And so I'm doing this thing that, if you look at YouTube, you will see that I stink at this. I am a terrible public speaker, because if you go on YouTube, you will find people with bazillions of views. And you say, oh, well, that's not because you're a terrible public speaker. It's because you're talking about religion, and everybody hates religion. If you would just change your subject to something more interesting, then maybe people would watch you. No, it's not true. That's not true, because we have this beautiful Swami in New York, Swami Arupeshananda. Probably many of you know that name. And he has talks on YouTube that have millions of views to them. So it isn't religion. And if you haven't heard his name, I will just say he is absolutely worth tuning into. His spiritual depth, his pedagogy, his encyclopedic knowledge of Scripture, these are things that I will never be able to compete with. I am going to stink at this until I die, compared to this man. He's just better than, barring some miracle of God, he's just going to be better than I am for the rest of my life. That's okay. That's okay, because it's okay for me to get up here and do this badly. Why? Because this thing has intrinsic merits. To the extent that I am up here speaking about spiritual truths with the hope of assimilating them in my own life, to the extent that I am doing that, then I am not concerned about Swami Arupeshananda and whoever else in this order is a better, maybe there's a whole lot of them, I don't know, I'm not keeping track of the YouTube scores, but whoever else in this order is better than I am, makes no difference. And to the extent that it does make a difference, to the extent that these Swamis that know more and are better and more popular than I am, that they are doing better than I am, to the extent that bothers me, then I'm trying to glorify the ego. This is the metric we have to use to figure out how to do it right, whatever it is. And whatever it is that we've chosen as our personal avenue of greatness, it will have its own unique sets of intrinsic merits that allow us to grow in virtue, and its own unique set of opportunities for the ego to assert itself and glorify itself and entangle us in the net of public opinion. And so what I've actually tried to do here is outline what would be called the path of Dharma in Vedanta. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to do our duties in life righteously. So we have this greatness within us, this divinity within us. We have this perfection within us. And we have these minds that are convoluted and confused and misinterpret this signal and turn it into get rich or get famous or get beautiful or get talented or whatever it is. We get this see your greatness out in the world in this way or that way. And then someone says, no, that's not what you want to do. What you want to do is practice virtue. That's the way to really satisfy your urge for greatness. And if we can hear that, we can't really do it, because we can't really give up, for whatever reason, these minds that we have that are so idiosyncratic are not that negotiable. And so we pursue our avenue of greatness even if we know that it's not ultimately going to give us fulfillment. Vedanta says, okay, that's the hand we're dealt. Just pursue it right. Do it right. Choose your chosen path. Those aspects of that path that allow you to grow in virtue, that's what you want to focus on. And the aspects of that path that tempt you into glorifying the ego, those are the parts you want to try and avoid. And we have to try and figure out what those things are for ourselves. So that concludes the it's okay to stink at it part of this talk. The next question that I think is logical at this point is, what's the payoff? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to try and basically suck out all the fun out of my pursuit of greatness and just turn it into a sort of path of virtue. It's maybe not what I was hoping for, but I'll try this. But what are we talking about here as the end game? Where does this end up? So in this part of the talk, I was going to talk about spiritual greatness and what that's like, because that's really what we're trying to manifest here. And I thought what I would do is I would go through a list of spiritual personalities and talk about their virtues and how they had reached perfection through those virtues. And I still want to do that, because that sounds like a cool talk, but I don't have time for it today because there's just a few minutes left. So I just picked one. And to some of you, this won't be surprising. I picked Swami Vivekananda, not because necessarily he's my favorite and the greatest in my mind, but because all these other guys that I was going to talk about, they all said that he was the greatest. All the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna agreed that Swami Vivekananda was disciple number one. Everybody agreed with that. And Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother also said, everybody said this, he was the greatest of the disciples. So what is that greatness like? Well, I didn't know him. I mean, he died in 1902, so I've only read about him and seen some of his spiritual descendants. So the best description I know of Swami Vivekananda's greatness was given by Sister Christine, one of his American disciples. And she writes beautifully, by the way. If you haven't read any of her stuff, she's worth reading. So this is her description of the greatness of Swami Vivekananda. Hopefully, according to Vedanta, this is where we are all headed. By some path or other, we are headed to this spiritual greatness. She says, now and then, at long intervals of time, a being finds his way into this world who is a wanderer, unquestionably from another sphere, who brings with him to this sorrowful world some of the glory, the power, and the radiance of the far distant region from which he came. He walks among men, but he is not at home here. He is a pilgrim, a stranger. He tarries but a night. Now, I'm sure the situation was more intense with Swami Vivekananda, but I have met some great souls in this order, and you do get this feeling. Sometimes when you're with these people and you're walking around the monastery and they're walking around the same monastery you are, and yet you feel like they're tuned into some other kind of reality. They're seeing some other universe that you are not perceiving. They are aware of something else. And this gets you, it makes you, at least, if it doesn't elevate your mind, which it does if you live with them long enough, it at least gives you the conviction that it is possible to be aware of another reality right here while we walk around this world. She continues, he shares the life of those about him, enters into their joys and sorrows, rejoices with them, mourns with them, but through it all, he never forgets who he is, whence he came, or what the purpose of his coming is. He never forgets his divinity. He remembers that he is the great, the glorious, the majestic self. Now, from my experience, this is one type of spiritual greatness. And it's, of course, a wonderful thing when you have one of these super souls that actually enters into your life and guides you and loves you through your suffering and supports you and helps you and encourages you, all these things. That's, of course, a great blessing. But there's another type of spiritual giants who doesn't do that. They seem merely to be kind of vaguely aware of the ups and downs of life. They are so immersed in elsewhere that what is causing you such drama in your life, they are aware of it, but it's not causing them any drama, or not nearly as much. And when you live with one of these people and you see that the ups and downs of life are not having nearly the effect on them that they're having on you, you begin to realize that what this person has, that you're experiencing the same external events, what this person has that you don't have is a mind that does not react as much as your mind reacts. And you begin to understand that the problem in your life is not the problem in your life, it's the problem in your mind. And if you can calm the mind, damp those reactions a little bit, you will live in peace and bliss because you see that in this other person. Now, both these types are free of this kind of life drama. They can choose either to enter into your life drama or not, depending on what they think will benefit you or however they make these calculations. I don't know. But the point is they are free from them, whether or not they enter into yours. She continues, she says, such a one I have seen, I have heard, I have revered. At his feet I have laid my soul's devotion. Such a being is beyond all comparison, for he transcends all ordinary standards and ideals. Others may be brilliant. His mind is luminous, for he has the power to put himself into immediate contact with the source of all knowledge. He is no longer limited to the slow processes to which ordinary human beings are confined. Others may be great. They are great only as compared with those in their own class. A saint is more holy, more pure, more single-minded than ordinary men, but with Swami Vivekananda, there could be no comparison. He belonged to another order. He was not of this world. He was a radiant being who descended from another, a higher sphere, for a definite purpose. One might have known that he would not tarry long. Now, she really raises the bar here, and I can't comment meaningfully on this because all these other disciples that I was thinking about talking about, that I said before, she knew a lot of them. And in spite of that, in spite of knowing all these great souls, she still says Swami Vivekananda is completely without comparison. So I can't really comment meaningfully on that. I can just support one of her little sentences here with an interesting anecdote that many people saw many times. I'll just give one version of it. She says that he is no longer limited to the slow processes of acquiring knowledge to which ordinary human beings are confined. This is a great story. The monastery in Bellarmont got a set of encyclopedias. And it occurs to me that possibly not all of you know what an encyclopedia is, amazingly. An encyclopedia, for those of you who don't know, is basically Wikipedia in a book, and except much better, because Wikipedia, anybody, theoretically, can edit and change and just, tell you that black is white and night is day. But with the Encyclopedia Britannica, only experts in the field were allowed to contribute to the book, so it was much more authoritative. And a typical encyclopedic volume could be like 30,000 pages, a set of books. So the monastery in Belur gets a brand new set of shiny encyclopedias. And Swamiji's there, and a few days after this encyclopedias show up, one of the disciples comes and says, wow, look at that, that's really cool. See, back in the day, having a big set of shiny new encyclopedias was cool. Now it's a waste of money. Anyway, so the disciple admires these shiny new books, and he says to Swamiji, you could spend your whole life trying to master the information in this stuff and not ever get there. And Swamiji says, what are you talking about? Ask me anything from the first 10 volumes. He's had the books for 3 or 4 days. 10 volumes is like 7,000 or 8,000 pages of information. That's a lot. And this is esoteric, abstract stuff written by experts. So the disciple says, wait, are you saying that you read the first 10? Yes, Swamiji says, why do you think I would ask you? Go ahead, go pick a book. And so the disciple starts picking books off the shelf. He finds that Swamiji knows every single thing in there, and that sometimes he can quote long passages verbatim. It's the kind of experience that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And the disciple says, this isn't human. Human beings can't do this. What is this? And Swamiji doesn't agree. He says, no, anyone can do this, given the proper discipline. That was what Swamiji said. Hard to believe. And for what it's worth, the disciple didn't believe him. He thought it wasn't human, and that was it. Swamiji says that we can all do it. As far as I know, no one else has ever done it in recorded history, but that's what he says. So Sister Christine ends with this amazing perspective on his greatness. This wonderful truth about these great souls. She says, great as he himself was, one never felt inferior in his presence. It's amazing, considering what we just heard about this encyclopedia story. One never felt inferior in his presence. In some indefinable way, he made all who come into contact with him feel great. He constantly voiced the highest truth as this: the greatest sin is to think yourself weak. No one is greater. Realize that you are Brahman. Nothing has power except as you bestow it. We are beyond the sun, the stars, and the universe. So in spite of this wonderful greatness that he had, he was so aware of that same wonderful greatness in you that it called it forth, and you actually felt it within yourself so that you didn't feel inferior to him. So she says. Now, from my experience, again, I'm sure it's a much less intense version of this, these spiritual personalities are indeed intimidating. They are. You get around one of these super souls, and it's a little jarring. On the other hand, it is also very encouraging and uplifting. It is. Because you feel like this divinity, this wonderful greatness, is something that you could almost touch. It's just so much closer to you than it was before. And that compensates for the natural sort of feeling of intimidation that we have around these great ones. And so then when one of these great ones like Swamiji says that you are beyond the sun and the stars and the universe, you don't just believe it. You actually feel it somewhat. You have a sense of it. And so maybe we don't have, I don't know. You got to try and find one of these super souls. In God's economy, it's not so easy to do. But if we don't have one of these super souls in our life right now, that doesn't mean that the truth of their words are falsified. It's still true. We still are that. Brahman, that is the truth of the Upanishads. Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. We are beyond the sun, the stars, and the universe. That is the greatness that is within us. That is what's calling us. That is what's dragging us towards friends on Facebook and likes on whatever else. This wonderful greatness that is so infinitely more than these things, these little tragic things that we go after in this world. And the good news is, Vedanta says that we are all destined to get it right. Sooner or later, through whatever paths of greatness that appeal to us now, we will eventually realize this ultimate greatness, that we are beyond the sun, the stars, and the universe. May the good Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. May good betide all. May happiness come to all. May all see the face of truth and be fortified with the armor of love, goodwill, joy, and understanding. Om. Peace, peace, peace.
Lead us from illusion to truth and wisdom's sight. Lead us from the darkness that fills our night. Lead us from death to endless life, to your heart of love, to your eternal light. Reach us through every veil that seems to hide your face, beyond our every ignorance, beyond both time and space. Give us strength and courage through thy blessed grace, and fill our hearts with your love by your sweet, compassionate face. Om Tat Sat Om, Om Tat Sat Om, Om Tat Sat Om, Om Tat Sat Om.
So thank you all for coming, and a couple announcements. Next Sunday's talk is Swami Arupeshananda, the Swami at Vivekananda House in Hollywood. He's going to come here on April 6th, and he's going to speak about the purpose of life. They tell me that Karma Yoga Day is Saturday, April 12th. That's also here, and that goes from 9:15 a.m. until noon. And I'm pretty sure after that they're going to provide you lunch. That's usually how that works. So you work and you get some food afterwards, and hopefully you get some spiritual company. Karma Yoga. I encourage you all to give it a try. And the big ticket item, which they didn't put here, but it's also something that's on the calendar coming up. This is for members. It's the annual members meeting, and that is, I think, April 26th, if I remember correctly. So that's only open to members, and it's, I would say, not an overtly spiritual meeting, but it does at least fill you in on sort of the industrial underbelly of the church here. And so you're all encouraged to attend that, assuming you're a member, and listen to the reports of the various centers, what we're doing, and how we're doing, and all that. So I will be at the door, and you can say hi, and then I'll come back here if you want to talk more, and we can chat a little bit about today's talk or about anything else you want to talk about. So thank you all for coming.
That too, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, what else are you going to
don't know
do?
all the reasons for everything.
Yeah, you hope that they're making... Hello? Okay, now I'm on. You hope that they're making us better people, right? Yeah, I mean, that's what you tell yourself. So, but yeah, I'm sorry you went through all that. Well,
I can let that go too.
what was it? Amrita just told me a joke outside, which you probably heard. And that is that the fortune teller, do you know the Swami Swananda's fortune teller joke? So you go to the fortune teller and they say, oh, the next 10 years are terrible. Oh, and the 10 years after that are terrible, right? You know this one? And then finally, it goes on and on like this, and finally the guy says, well, what about after that? And the fortune teller looks in the crystal ball and says, yeah, after that you'll get used to it. All right.
I just read all the back of the memorial yesterday.
That was on the back of the memorial, that joke?
On his memorial.
Oh, on his memorial. They put that joke?
They put
Really?
a number of things on the map.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Thank
Well,
you, Swami.
okay. Can I do this? Had knee surgery recently, but it seems like I can do this again, sort of. Not for very long, probably. Anyway, hi. How are you guys doing? Good. Hi. So, on greatness. It was this talk was a real battle for me. I really struggled with it because it's good to have a plan before you sit down to write a talk. And I sat down and said, okay, God, what are we going to do? And just started typing. And I just wound up going in circles and circles and circles. And so it was very convoluted. It started off as a convoluted talk, and I had to keep trying to order it. And anyway, so whatever happened is whatever happened. You know, you try and do the best you can with these things, and sometimes you're happy with them, and sometimes you're not. Anyway, how are you guys doing? Any questions or comments? Or?
I have a question.
Yeah, okay.
Reflecting back, Swananda insisting that you start lecturing.
Yeah.
Looking back, do you feel now that your spiritual practice was stuck?
Well, don't you always feel like your spiritual practice is stuck? You know, I don't know. Have I ever really sat down and thought, wow, I'm really jamming spiritually right now? I don't think I've ever had that, you know, boy, am I making progress experience. I mean, every once in a while you get a ray of light and something nice happens and you feel elevated. You know, you feel some sense of something higher. You feel like your heart is maybe a little expanded. You get like a little ray of hope. You get rays of hope. And sometimes, at least for some people, it turns into the glorious sun of hope. But am I making progress? That, I don't think I've ever actually had that sensation. I am progressing spiritually. I am the doer of the spiritual practice, and I'm doing a really good job at it. No, I don't think I've ever had that. I think it's really more of a grace thing. You struggle, and sometimes it seems like that struggle is being rewarded, and sometimes it seems like it isn't, and then sometimes it seems like you're not struggling, and that non-struggle is being rewarded for no reason. somehow the grace is just there when you haven't really, it doesn't seem like you were even really looking for it. Sometimes you go to this shrine, and this isn't just me, this is Sri Ramakrishna, amazingly, said sometimes when I sit down to meditate, the tears flow. And he says, and other times I feel nothing at all. He says, I feel nothing at all. And you think, wait a minute, this guy's in samadhi most of the time, it seems like. And yet he says there are some days where he feels nothing at all. So that's a universal phenomenon. Was I stuck? I don't know. But I think what I did get out of Swami Swahananda's instruction, I was lucky. I'm grateful that he was willing to beat on me as long as he was willing to beat on me, because I was stubborn. And but he was willing to beat on me until I finally could see the value of the activity in itself, the intrinsic merit of speaking. And it was through that instruction that, unless you're a hypocrite, you're going to make more of an effort to assimilate spiritual teachings in your own life. And that much, I would say, is true. I knew it was true at the time when he said it, and it has proven to be true. You think about some of the things you said, and I can't do this because, that's not, it makes a deeper impression on the mind. When you get up and talk about it, it makes a deeper impression on the mind, and that deeper impression on the mind changes your behavior. So yeah, I guess that's maybe not the answer you're looking for, but...
I felt like Swahananda had the ability to give you something that you didn't realize you really needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I would agree with that 100%.
Identify it,
No, I couldn't.
you clarify it.
Right, and that's, I think, exactly what he did. And the reason I couldn't see it is because I had this kind of fundamentalist viewpoint with the gospel, And it's not, in my defense, think about what that book is, for those of you who have read it. How many times, at least if you subscribe to what I would call the fundamental dogma of practicing Vedantists, that would be that verse in the Gita where Krishna says to Arjuna, whenever goodness grows weak and evil increases, I make myself a body to destroy the sin of the sinner and establish righteousness and holiness. Krishna says this to Arjuna in the Gita. And so what does that mean? It means that same being, that same teacher of teachers, that incarnation appears as Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Ramakrishna, Chaitanya, all these other names that we hear. One. There is one teacher that appears, and these times and personalities are like clothing. They're like window dressings. But the window's dressed a certain way, but you see through the window. You see the infinite truth through the window. Right? So that is, I would say, the sort of fundamental dogma of practicing Vedantists. And so I thought Sri Ramakrishna is one of these super soul teachers, with the same one appearing again and again. There he is again. This time, he has brought with him a stenographer, M, the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And because all these other times, it gets garbled, it gets edited, it gets, confused, and he wants to make sure we get it right this time. So he brings this guy with a eidentic memory who writes down in real time all the words in his own mysterious shorthand, all the words that Sri Ramakrishna is saying. And something that a lot of people don't know is Sri Ramakrishna would have a room full of people that he's speaking to. And suddenly he would have M right next to him. And suddenly he would ignore this group of people and say, M, did you get that point? Note that point well. And the other disciples would say, why does he talk to M like this? That's kind of weird. Why does he suddenly want M to remember this, And Shivananda, one of his monastic disciples, was taking notes about, like M was doing. Shivananda, he was so impressed by the master's words, he starts writing them down. And this goes on for a while, and Sri Ramakrishna turns to him and says, look here, why are you paying so much attention to what I'm saying? He says, that's being taken care of. That's not your job. He knew exactly what M's function was. He knew this. During the whole time this was happening, he was conscious of what he was doing. So he presumably, I mean, if you accept that, then these truths that he preached were chosen for us to hear and try and assimilate in our own lives, particularly for this modern age. And if you read his teachings, you find there's a lot of stuff there that is just aimed straight at the modern age. And so he doesn't just accidentally say once or twice, unless you have the command from God, don't teach people. He says it again and again and again in the book. And so when I would argue with Swami Arupeshananda, there's a couple times I actually brought the book with me. And I said, here, you know. And he said, put the book down, kid, you know. I mean, he, of course, knows the book probably better than I do. But nevertheless, that was my mindset. Because I was so convinced of the importance of the words chosen because of the circumstances around which they were chosen. If you really believe that this is God in the flesh, and you really believe that he's brought this stenographer with him so that he'll get it right, well, then this book is something that you want to take pretty seriously. And so I consciously rejected, I mean, I didn't think about the teaching and you know, what it meant or why he said it so much. It was just over. It was time to play basketball and ping pong, like I said. That was it. I wasn't going to be a teacher unless, you know, the glorious events of God appearing and saying, go speak, which he says it does happen. He says God does appear before man and speak, and he does give the command to do this. I mean, he's very clear this is a literal teaching. You know, so it took a lot for Swami to get me off of that rock. It did. And you know, from another standpoint, you think, well, all these other guys are teaching on Sunday. Haven't they read the book too? What are they going to say? Oh, well, Swami so-and-so is not teaching because he hasn't had the command from God. But the rest of us, what? We're ignoring that teaching? We've had the command from God? I mean, it's kind of not fair to everybody else to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm too holy to preach, essentially. I'm just holy enough to play basketball and ping pong, that's it, because I'm taking these teachings more seriously than everybody else, right? So, I mean, in that sense, it's also kind of not fair to the rest of the community, although Swami tried that argument on me and I didn't go for it. But anyway, I'm glad he finally did win. I'm glad he won, because he was right. I'm glad oh, well, thank you. But I'm glad he won because, yes, it's true, and I think that's true for all of us. You know, if we talk about spirituality, if we talk about spiritual truth, even just with our friends, you know, we will make more of an effort to live spiritual truth. I think that's one of the reasons that talking about spiritual truth is so encouraged for everyone. You know, and as it says, 2 or more in the Bible, 2 or more, where 2 or more of you are gathered together, I am there among you. Just one person to talk about these things is enough. You don't have to get up in front of a group. Yeah, the microphone here.
Yeah, I had a question about the consciousness of the heart as opposed to the consciousness of the mind. It seems like I'm starting to experience that there's more truth and simplicity from the heart. And when the mind becomes like submissive to the heart, the mind slows down and there's more peace. I was just wondering if that's an experience.
Yeah, I think that can happen. You know, the heart also needs its own kind of purification. The heart is the seat of emotions and desires, and they reflect in the mind. And sometimes the heart leads us into, you know, we want things that are not really that good for us. Assuming that the heart is leading us correctly, and you know, the spiritual heart does, but the problem is that sometimes, you know, its reflection is a little unclear. You know, the reflection of the heart is a little unclear in the mind. And that's why that prayer of Chaitanya's, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. That's the prayer that Chaitanya used to say and teach. So you chant the name of the Lord and you clean the mirror of the heart. And upon that clean heart is a true reflection of what we should and shouldn't be doing, and it's a true source of guidance to us. So assuming that your heart is in a fairly good state, then yes, it should be followed. But, again, it gets back to this kind of murky area where sometimes we confuse personal glorification with spiritual ambition. I like basketball because it's pure and holy, and I don't like ping pong because it's impure and unholy, right? That sort of silly example points to a much more profound problem, which I gave with the example of charity, where you really do start with an altruistic motive, and it really does get diluted with other people's input in the form of attention and money and praise, all these things. These things can drive us off our path, and then we can actually get confused and think I'm doing this because I'm a saint and I love people, when in fact we're really enjoying the attention we're getting. Very subtle. These influences are very subtle, and so we have to be very careful. But anyway, in general, assuming all that, then I'd say, yeah, you're right. You do want to follow the heart when you can. I mean, if you're paying attention, you do feel promptings of the heart. And they have a certain quality, the pure, the more noble promptings of the heart have a certain quality about them that if the mind is quiet enough, you can distinguish between the stuff that's going to lead you in the right direction and the stuff that's going to lead you astray. But that's a lot of ifs on the way, right?
But isn't there an inherent purity in the heart, like the love that's already there, that we were born, as a child of God, and there's love in there? And if love is the guide and love is the wisdom, seems like there's an intelligence behind that,
Sure, absolutely. All that is true. And yes, the heart is pure. The problem is it's covered with dirt, at least in a lot of us. And so we have to, that dirt, like I said today, why, we have this greatness within us, purity, love, divinity, whatever you want to call it. We have this within us. And it calls us to greatness. And yet somehow we have so many different ideas of greatness. So one person thinks greatness is playing the guitar, somebody else thinks greatness is being a millionaire, somebody else thinks it's being a playwright or famous or something, or learning how to juggle. Where do we get all these different ideas of greatness if there's that one divinity within us? It's because of the peculiar idiosyncrasies of our minds and our hearts. It distorts this divine signal, and it gets misinterpreted into all kinds of external pursuits, and they're so varied from one person to the next. But the heart is pure. The heart is pure. The problem is getting the signal from the heart to the mind. There's a whole lot of slips between the cup and the lips, right? That's really the problem. So why do we practice spiritual life? Is to clarify the real purity of the heart for the mind, so the purity of the heart will be reflected in the mind, and so that we will know our duty and our profitable agenda in every situation. That's why we practice spirit. That's why Chaitanya says, chant the name of the Lord and his glories unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. So that's one method. Chant the name of the Lord over and over and over again. Purify the heart, and then have that clarity and that love grow in you. And that's just, that's one method of yoga. You could call that Raja Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, but there's other methods of yoga. That's one purification method. And so yeah, it's all about purification. It's all part of the purification process, as Swami Swahananda once said to me. Yeah, another one over here. Yeah.
On, the greatness talk that you just gave, it kind of, to me, when I was listening to that, it reminded me that shouldn't we all try to get better at things that maybe aren't our strong suit? One answer you could have given your colleague who didn't want to play ping pong, it's easy to play to your strong hand. Why not try and, teach yourself? There's some humility or some personal growth you could have from trying to get better at something that you're not good at. You know, it made me think that shouldn't an artist, try and get better at math or doing their taxes, right? Shouldn't an accountant also spend time doing something that they're not so good at, or opening their mind in a different way to art or paint or...
I think that one's probably better. Opening your mind in a different way to whatever it is you're doing. I think that's probably more realistic. Asking people to just go out and be bad at things that they're naturally not inclined to do anyway is probably asking too much. You're doing fairly well as an artist and you hate math, and why don't you go learn some math and starve? Well, probably that's going to be a tough sell. But yes, of course, your point is well taken, that you want to try and grow in humility. That was one thing you pointed out. And I don't know how well any particular avenue of greatness is going to support that particular virtue of humility. But as I said in the talk, whatever avenue we pursue, even according to Sri Krishna, if it is mass murder on a battlefield, even if that is our chosen avenue of pursuits, that can be done in such a way as to lift us to the highest spiritual realization. So it doesn't really matter. It's not that we have to switch from being a soldier to an accountant or whatever. It's that we have to do it right. We have to do it right. And the way I chose to describe doing it right today was by saying that the activity had intrinsic merits, as well as intrinsic trappings for the ego. So each activity has these two, as Krishna says in the Gita, all action is riddled with imperfection, as smoke is riddled with fire. And so whatever we choose will have these two sides. It will have an ability to help us grow in virtue, and it will have the ability to encourage us to glorify the ego and become entangled. Every activity has these two sides. So it's not so much that we need to switch our activity, it's that we need to emphasize the correct side of the activity. I mentioned, I encouraged finding the intrinsic merit of the activity. Another way that that's put in the Gita is to dedicate your action to God. They actually mean the same thing. But to dedicate your activity to God instead of the glorification of the little self. That's basically the same idea as saying instead of views on YouTube, you're going for the intrinsic merit of the activity. Krishna says instead of glorifying the little self, glorify me through your actions. Or as Christ says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and do what? And glorify your Father which is in heaven. Right? So that's what you want to do. You want to act so that you glorify God through your actions. You dedicate your actions to God. But which actions? Yes, I could have told Mortimer, you should play ping pong because you're bad at it. That wasn't going to work with him. And that's not really the message I was trying to put out today. It's really more that he could do basketball in a different way. Trying to do basketball and be the star isn't the way to do it in the setting that we're in. If you're trying to be a star, people need to do that. That's something that they do, okay. But in the monastery, we're really trying to foster an environment conducive to spiritual practice for a bunch of young men that are giving up a lot in order to try and become saints, which is not easy to do. And so that's the purpose of basketball in the monastery. And so it's really more that he could continue playing basketball in that way. But like I said, to his credit, he admitted, he wasn't stupid. I liked him. He was a good guy. And he admitted what was essentially a character defect. He did. He was honest about it. I think he knew what he was saying when he said it. If Mortimer isn't good at it, Mortimer doesn't do it. That was kind of a self-parody. So yeah, I should give him some credit for that. It's a funny name, Mortimer. I don't know where I came up with that one. Anyway, oh yeah, microphone here.
Pranam Maharaj, great lecture. I was in India and on Lord Shiva's birthday, and I took it deep in Ganges, and something remind me as Sister Christine talk about Swami Vivekananda, how he lifted everybody in front of him. On that notation, I went to Ganges to take a dip around 6 o'clock in the morning. And by that time, entire Calcutta's population, perhaps in the Ganges banks, and millions of people, right? So all the roads were closed.
This
So
isn't Kumbh Mela, is it?
No, it's not
Okay,
Kumbh Mela.
yeah.
It's
So this is
Calcutta.
in Calcutta, okay. all right,
Calcutta,
yeah.
but it's the same kind of continuation, Ganges coming to
Right,
meet
right,
the
yeah.
ocean. So I managed to go, and then I took a dip, and some family member told me to get some Ganges water, so gave me a container. So I forgot, so I'm now going through crowd again, and then finally I reach at the edge of the water, and I saw hundreds of people getting in the water, and I asked one guy, he may be 17, 18, and he's carrying 10 different containers with hand, with his arms. So he's in the water. So I say, could you kindly get me some water? I gave him the container. You know what he does? He leave all his container, and container started floating in the Ganges, and he first goes swim further and fill my container and bring it back. So
Wow,
that's
what a nice guy.
Yeah, that's remind me the service. You live by servicing other, and that was an.
Sounds like you bumped into a great soul there. Yeah, okay.
And when you say that every human have the potential of star, moons, and universe, in that I was wondering, so every one of us in this room and anybody in the world can in this life directly speak and meet God in that sense, right? If they concentrate on that.
Well, not only that, actually, it's unavoidable, as you know, in the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna says, "Whatever path men walk is my path. Wherever they walk, it leads to me. There is no place else to go. This is where we are all going to wind up." Now, we can make that journey difficult and long and convoluted, or we can make it straight and narrow and relatively painless. This much is up to us. Our ultimate destination is the same for everyone, according to the Gita and according to Vedanta in general, because we are that. We are that what Swamiji said, beyond the sun and the stars and the universe. We are that. That divinity within us is going to manifest itself sooner or later. We can delay it, and if we delay it, we will make ourselves miserable, but we will not change our ultimate fate. And again, Sri Krishna says in the Gita that once you have asked the way to Brahman, you will be dragged onward in the path even in spite of yourself. He says that, even in spite of yourself, even if you resist this program. All of you here are curious about this God realization business. And that means, in a certain sense, you're done for. This is going to happen to you eventually. Now, you might have a long way to go. You might say, well, I think I'd rather go play the banjo or something. You might change your mind. I don't want to do this anymore. This guy's boring, whatever. Once you've asked the way to Brahman, you will get there, even in spite of your efforts at resistance. And I can tell you from my own experience that resisting this program just means pain. It's a lot better to just go with the program, to try and grow spiritually. You are going to suffer in this world anyway. Nobody lives here without suffering. We all do it. And so if we're going to suffer in this world, we might as well be suffering for God, because suffering is on the agenda. If we suffer for God, we make progress in the spiritual growth. Anyway, did I get off the subject? I think I might have. No? Okay.
That's reminding me how Lord Krishna speaking Arjuna in Kurukshetra. So that suffering, all the trouble human goes through, could you consider, is it possible to think that suffering and all struggle inside of us is Kurukshetra? we are continuously battling through.
Sure, yes, absolutely. That book is a metaphor for the battle of our mind. Yes, I would agree with that completely. That the 5 Pandava brothers, those are your 5 good habits. And the 100 Kurus are your 100 evil habits of thinking and acting. And you think through delusion that those evil habits that are leading you astray are actually your friends. And you're afraid to kill them because you've cherished them and nourished them for so long. And so this is why spiritual life is so daunting, because we have this fundamental misconception. All these things that I do, that I've been doing all this time, religion says stop those things, and now do these other things that you don't like and aren't fun, but they're good for you. All those things that are fun and that you like doing, those are not good for you. Stop those. That's the battle of the Bhagavad Gita right there, is to first figure out who our friends are and who our enemies are, and then fight them. Most of us don't want to do that because we're too attached to our lives and habits. And Krishna says, the reason you're not fighting your bad tendencies is not because you're holy, because that's what Arjuna tries to tell him in the beginning. He gives him a speech very much like Jesus about turning the other cheek and all this stuff. And Krishna says, you're not holy, you're a coward. So we have to fight. We have to fight ourselves. That is basically the battle of Kurukshetra, and the Bhagavad Gita is the battle of our mind. We have to fight to win our mind. And the mind has got a lot of momentum against our agenda. You try and tell the mind what to do, and it lets you know just how much power you have over it. You just try not to think about elephants for 30 seconds and see what the mind does. The mind will tell you, oh yeah, you don't want elephants? Here you go, elephants.
So I was in Dakshineswar, and I went early morning, and there was tons of people when temple opened. Big lines, so I didn't get a chance to see Mother the way I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back another day, and I saw Ramakrishna, the desk Ramakrishna used to see.
Yeah, in his room. You went to his room?
In
Yeah.
his room.
Yeah.
And then I went to see.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. I've been there. It's very, for those of you who haven't, I mean, at least when I was there, which was 13 years ago, the room looked a lot like the picture does in the book of the Gospel. The room looked just like that. And you really feel something special sitting in that room, I thought. Yeah,
So,
go ahead, yeah.
There was a priest inside the room,
Uh-huh.
and I was praying, and he goes inside from the desk, Ramakrishna desk, he bring a lotus in my hand.
Wow, all right.
That was very...
Yeah, that's
very
nice, yeah.
profound. So I go back to see Mother, and I'm sharing in front of everyone. Mother was completely live.
That's what he said. He said she was living, yeah.
And I only was contemplating that if there was nobody else in the temple, I could have perhaps talked to Mother. I just want to share that.
All right, very good. Okay, well, we're getting close to lunchtime. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. It's nice to see you again. Drive safe on the way home. I'm sure the roads are slippery. And time. Okay.